I was fixing the Wi-Fi router when I heard my fiancé whisper, "He's in the kitchen. Keep quiet." I followed the voice to the bedroom door, and the night started like any other ordinary one. Elise was in the bedroom watching some drama on her tablet, and I was kneeling beside the router in the kitchen, trying to fix the connection that had been cutting out all evening. I remember the small green light flickering stubbornly while my laptop screen kept flashing, "No internet." The kind of irritation that usually makes a man mutter under his breath. But then I heard her voice. It wasn't loud, just a faint whisper carried through the half-open bedroom door. "He's in the kitchen. Keep quiet." My hands froze. For a moment, I thought maybe she was talking to me through her Bluetooth headset, the way she sometimes did while multitasking. But her tone, low, hurried, almost panicked, didn't sound like someone on a casual call. It sounded like a warning. I stayed still, pretending to keep fiddling with the router. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding against the tile floor. Then came another sound, the soft creak of the mattress, followed by what I swear was a quick shuffle, bare feet touching the floor. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. We lived in a small 2-bedroom condo, barely enough space for secrets, yet suddenly it felt enormous. The house made new noises I'd never noticed before, the air vent humming, the floorboards settling, the faint buzz of Elise's tablet playing in the background. I walked down the hallway, each step measured. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, I could see her lying on her side, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. The tablet was dark. There was no one else in sight. "Elise?" I called quietly. No answer. She shifted, murmured something that sounded rehearsed, like a line said just to buy time. I noticed her phone face down on the nightstand, the charging cable dangling loose. That's when I saw it, the edge of a second glass of whiskey on her dresser. I hadn't poured it. I don't even drink whiskey. My stomach turned. The next morning, she was all smiles, humming while making coffee. She asked if the internet was fixed, kissed my cheek, acted like nothing strange had happened. But she kept her phone close, too close, never letting it out of sight. I tried to push it aside. Maybe I'd imagined the whisper. Maybe the second glass was hers from the night before. But that evening, when I came home from work early, the sliding door to the patio was unlocked. Elise was in the shower. On the couch lay a men's jacket. Expensive, definitely not mine. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. My pulse was pounding in my ears. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she froze for half a second, then forced a casual smile. She asked if I'd ordered dinner. She didn't ask about the jacket. That night, I couldn't sleep. She fell asleep quickly, facing the wall. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, every sound in the apartment amplified. When I reached for her phone, she stirred and tucked it under her pillow without even opening her eyes. The next day, while she was at work, I bought a small Wi-Fi camera, one of those discreet ones you can hide anywhere. I placed it inside the vent grill in the hallway, pointed directly at the bedroom door. I told myself I didn't want to catch her cheating. I just wanted peace of mind. But deep down, I already knew. That night, she went to bed early. Around midnight, I got a notification from the camera app, motion detected. My hands trembled as I opened the feed. There he was, a man, tall, wearing dark clothes, slipping into our apartment from the patio door. He moved quietly, like someone who'd done it before. He took off his shoes and walked straight toward the bedroom. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My fiancée, the woman I'd been planning a wedding with, was lying in bed waiting for someone who wasn't me. I moved fast. The adrenaline drowned out everything. I flung the kitchen drawer open, grabbed the nearest heavy object, a wrench, and stormed down the hallway. The man froze when I entered. He was half-dressed, his shirt unbuttoned, shoes still in hand. Elise gasped and scrambled to the edge of the bed, her face pale. He stammered something, but I didn't hear it. The room erupted in chaos. He bolted toward the patio, knocking over a chair. I chased him out into the cold air, my bare feet hitting the concrete. He vaulted over the railing and disappeared into the night, leaving one shoe behind. Elise shouted from the doorway, her voice cracking with desperation. I turned back to her, heart racing, the wrench still in my hand. She looked terrified, but not because of what she'd done, because she'd been caught. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I just stared at her, at the mess, the wrinkled sheets, the half-empty whiskey glass, the jacket still on the couch. Everything felt unreal. Finally, she started talking fast, trying to twist the situation. She said the man was just a friend, that I'd misunderstood, that nothing had happened. The words spilled out like water from a broken faucet. Excuses, fragments, contradictions. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just held up my phone and showed her the live feed. Clear footage of the man entering, clear proof she couldn't erase. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She sat down slowly, shaking. I watched her face change from panic to calculation. I'd seen that look before, The same one she wore when she negotiated her way through work problems, always thinking 2 moves ahead. I realized she wasn't sorry. She was strategizing. The silence stretched. I turned off the camera app and said I needed air. She followed me into the kitchen, begging, promising it meant nothing. Her words blurred into noise. I stood by the sink, staring out the window, feeling the weight of everything I'd just seen pressing down like a physical force. I didn't know yet that this was just the surface, that what I thought was a simple betrayal was actually something far darker. But right then, all I knew was the smell of cold air from the open patio door, the faint buzz of the router light still blinking on the counter, and the sound of Elise quietly locking the door behind me, like she was sealing us both into a lie that was about to collapse. That night, I slept on the couch, phone in hand, replaying the footage until my battery died. I didn't delete it. I didn't speak to her again. I just stared at the dark screen, already planning what to do next. And when the morning came, she acted like nothing had happened. Pancakes, coffee, small talk. But I noticed her hand trembling as she poured syrup, and for the first time, she couldn't meet my eyes. That was when I knew. The whisper hadn't been a mistake. It was a warning to someone else, not me. And now that I'd heard it, nothing in this house was ever going to be the same again. The next morning, Elise acted like nothing had happened. She hummed as she poured coffee, asked about my day, and even slipped her arms around me while I stood motionless at the counter. It was a performance, one I couldn't interrupt yet. I realized then that silence unnerved her more than anger ever could. I told her I needed space, packed a small bag, and left for a few days under the pretense of staying with a friend. I didn't go far. I stayed at a motel a few blocks away, quiet enough to think. From there, I started piecing things together. The man who had been in our apartment, I finally recognized him. Grant. I'd met him once, at Elise's office holiday party. He'd shaken my hand and complimented our condo view like he already knew it better than I did. At the time, I thought nothing of it. That evening, I called my old college friend, Eric, who worked in the same corporate district as Elise. I asked if he'd heard anything about her at work. He hesitated before saying she'd been having problems, apparently telling people I'd grown controlling, that I checked her messages, that she felt unsafe. None of it was true, but hearing it chilled me. She wasn't just betraying me personally. She was building a narrative, an exit plan that made me the villain. That night, I returned to the condo quietly. I knew she'd left for a late dinner with her team. I unlocked the door and went straight to her desk. I wasn't looking for texts or love notes. I wanted proof of intention, and I found it, in the form of an email draft saved on her laptop, half-written, never sent. It was addressed to our joint financial advisor. She was asking how to liquidate her half of the account in case of relationship instability. I kept scrolling and found something worse. Transaction logs connecting her personal account to a company name I didn't recognize. Transfers labeled consulting fees. The sums weren't small. My stomach tightened. Whatever she and Grant were doing wasn't just cheating. They were moving money and using my name to cover it. The documents attached listed my freelance business as the billing address. I made copies, sent everything to a hidden drive, and deleted my search traces. Then I turned off the light and sat there in the dark, realizing how deep I was in something that could destroy me. The next morning, Elise called me from an unknown number. She said she missed me, that she'd made a mistake, that she couldn't sleep without me home. Her voice trembled just enough to sound genuine. I told her I'd think about it. But instead of going home, I went to see Eric again. I needed context. He lowered his voice, looking uneasy. Apparently, Grant and Elise had been spending long nights in the office together, claiming they were finalizing vendor contracts. But recently, there'd been whispers about unauthorized fund movements. Someone from accounting had flagged it, though nothing official yet. That was when I understood the full picture. Elise wasn't just betraying me emotionally. She was using my digital footprint to shield their scheme. If the company traced the transfers, they'd see my business name, my bank routing, my address. She was preparing to ruin me if things went wrong. I spent the next 2 days planning. First, I visited the bank and quietly separated my account access. Then I met a cybersecurity consultant, an old client, and asked him to check for unusual logins. Within hours, he confirmed that my home IP address had been used repeatedly at odd hours, connecting to servers from Elise's company. Someone had been logging into confidential networks using my router. That night, I went home. Elise's eyes widened when she saw me standing at the door. She ran into my arms, overacting again, and started crying. I didn't believe a second of it. We sat at the kitchen table, pretending to talk about trust. She told me she wanted to start fresh. I agreed to it with a calm she mistook for forgiveness. I said I'd move back in. She smiled through her tears, thinking she'd won. But I'd already made my move. Before returning, I'd set up an auto-forward rule on her email. Every incoming and outgoing message silently copied to a secure backup. I'd also linked our home Wi-Fi logs to cloud storage, so every device that connected would leave a trace I could access remotely. That evening, she suggested ordering takeout. I nodded, but my attention drifted to her phone lighting up repeatedly on the counter. I recognized the contact name she'd used for Grant, Leo Designs. She grabbed the phone quickly, too quickly. Later that night, when she was showering, I checked the feed again. The hallway camera was still active, and the view of our bedroom door hadn't changed. But the timing was almost poetic. As she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, a notification flashed on my phone. Guest device connected. The same alias as before. I locked the screen, grabbed my jacket, and told her I was stepping out for a quick walk. I parked across the street, opened the live camera feed, and waited. 15 minutes later, Grant appeared again, climbing up from the patio, same quiet confidence, same routine. Elise greeted him like nothing had happened. I couldn't believe the audacity. Less than 2 nights after being caught, they were at it again, not even afraid. But something was different this time. Grant wasn't just sneaking in for her. He had a folder under his arm and a small external hard drive. I zoomed in on the footage. They weren't touching each other. They were sitting side by side, looking at my laptop. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just an affair, it was a setup. They were downloading something, maybe transferring files. I drove away before rage took over. I needed to stay calm. When I returned, the patio door was shut again. The whiskey glasses were gone. Elise was lying in bed pretending to be asleep. The next morning, she served breakfast, cheerful again. I watched her move around the kitchen like an actress rehearsing lines. She had no idea that I'd already seen enough to destroy everything she was building. When she left for work, I opened my laptop. Sure enough, recent files had been copied and renamed. She'd used my credentials to log into a company server. My identity was the mask behind their crime. That night, I texted her, "Let's talk about us tonight." She responded instantly, a heart emoji, followed by "can't wait." But I wasn't planning a conversation. I was planning a trap. In 2 days, I'd make her believe I'd forgiven her completely. I'd make her comfortable again, careless again, confident enough to finish what she and Grant had started. And when that happened, she wouldn't see the camera, or the copies, or the message already waiting in her company's HR inbox. She thought she'd fooled me, but she didn't realize that the man fixing the Wi-Fi was already rewiring the entire story. 2 days later, Elise thought she had her world back under control. She was cheerful again, humming while getting ready for work, leaving a lipstick mark on my cheek like nothing had ever happened. That morning, she even packed me lunch, a gesture that used to mean love, but now just reeked of guilt. I thanked her, smiled, and played along. I had moved back in fully, letting her believe I'd forgiven her. I made a show of being vulnerable, even saying things like, "I want us to work, Elise. I don't want to lose you." Her face softened every time. She thought I was trying to win her back, when really, I was watching every move she made. Behind that act, everything was set. I'd rerouted all our home Wi-Fi traffic through a private server that logged every connection and screenshot every device's activity in real time. Every keystroke from her laptop now belonged to me. Every password, every message, every hidden folder, mine. That week, she worked late 3 times. Each time, I saw from the camera feed that she came home early, alone at first, then Grant appeared about 20 minutes later. No affection this time, just paperwork, USB drives, and phones on speaker. They were moving something big. On the 3rd night, they left together. I checked my phone immediately. A new email had just been sent from Elise's account to an external address labeled archive. Attached, encrypted company files, timestamped from my IP. They were still using me as their cover. The next morning, I called her at work and told her we should invite her parents for dinner. Her voice perked up instantly. She thought it meant I was serious about forgiving her. I said we should do it on Friday, that I wanted to tell them we were rebuilding. She loved the idea. That night, while she showered, I set up one more camera, angled toward the living room, the same place where I planned to confront her. But not yet. First, I needed one last piece of proof. Friday came. Elise spent the afternoon cooking and cleaning, nervous but glowing, like a bride rehearsing for another wedding. Her parents arrived first, polite, curious, cautious around me. I was kind, attentive, smiling the whole time. They believed we were healing. Then came the knock. Elise's face went pale when she opened the door. Grant stood there, holding a small package. Her mother frowned. "Who's this?" Grant froze, realizing too late that he'd walked into a trap. Elise tried to play it off, saying he was dropping off something for work. I offered him a seat and insisted he stay for dinner. He hesitated but sat down, clearly sweating. Throughout the meal, Elise kept glancing between us, her fork barely touching her plate. I kept my tone casual, asking Grant about work, his promotion, his team projects. Every answer came slower than the last. After dinner, I stood up, walked to the counter, and placed a small stack of papers on the table. The Wi-Fi logs, the email prints, the screenshots. Elise's hand trembled as she reached for them. Grant shifted in his chair, ready to bolt. Her father asked what this was about. I told him calmly. These two had been using my business account and home network to commit corporate theft. The affair was a distraction, a way to blur the timeline. Everything had been happening under my roof. Elise stammered that it wasn't true, but I didn't even argue. I opened the footage on my phone, the video of her and Grant transferring files 2 nights ago. Her mother gasped. Grant stood abruptly, muttering something about not doing this here. That's when things spiraled. Elise panicked, shouting that Grant had forced her into it, that he'd threatened her job. Grant shouted back that she'd planned everything. The fake affair, the lies about me, even the financial transfers. Her parents just sat frozen, watching their daughter unravel. I let them argue until the moment was perfect. Then I revealed the last card, the printed letter I'd already sent to her company's HR department, containing timestamps, footage, and document hashes proving insider theft. I told her that by now, her boss had probably received it. The blood drained from her face. She grabbed my arm, begging, whispering that we could fix this together. Her parents stood there, horrified, realizing the daughter they'd raised had been manipulating everyone in the room. Then the doorbell rang again. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, called in by her company after receiving the report. Elise looked like she might faint. Grant tried to talk, but his voice cracked. They questioned them briefly, checked IDs, and asked to see the footage. I handed over the USB drive. When they saw it, the senior officer nodded and asked both Elise and Grant to come with them for statements. Elise cried out, saying she was innocent, that I was framing her. But one officer simply said, "Ma'am, the evidence shows otherwise." They took them both. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Elise turning back, mouthing something like, "Please." Her parents stayed, stunned, silent. I poured them both water, told them calmly that I hadn't wanted to involve them, but needed witnesses. Her mother covered her mouth, shaking her head. Her father whispered, "What did she do to you?" I didn't answer. I just handed him the spare key to the apartment and said I'd be moving out in the morning. When they left, I sat alone in the kitchen for the first time in weeks, listening to the hum of the fridge and the faint buzz of the router light still blinking. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. But I knew this wasn't over. An hour later, I got a call from Eric. He'd heard through office whispers. Elise and Grant's arrest had triggered an emergency audit. Turns out, the missing funds weren't small. They'd been diverting client payments through fake subcontractors. Elise's name was all over it. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but strangely calm. I hadn't shouted, hadn't hit anyone, hadn't even cursed. I'd just let the truth surface, one quiet step at a time. Before bed, I went through one last routine, wiping my home systems, removing cameras, deleting backups. I didn't need them anymore. But when I unplugged the vent camera, I stopped for a moment. The same spot where this had all started, where I'd first heard that whisper. "He's in the kitchen, keep quiet." Now, the only sound in the apartment was the click of me turning the device off. The trap had closed. And the person who said it wasn't me. It was her. She just never realized she'd built it around herself. I went to sleep on the couch, phone silent beside me. Tomorrow would bring fallout. Lawyers, HR meetings, press statements. But that wasn't my concern anymore. She'd used my name to build her lie. I'd used her arrogance to end it. And now, for the first time in months, I slept without fear of what voice might be whispering in my house. The following morning felt like the first real sunrise I'd seen in months. The condo was silent. No sound of Elise's hair dryer, no clatter of her heels, no forced laughter echoing from the hallway. The faint smell of her perfume still lingered, clinging to the curtains, and it made the air heavy. I stood in the kitchen drinking coffee from the same mug I'd been holding that night. I heard the whisper. The night, everything cracked open. Before I even finished the cup, my phone started buzzing. Unknown numbers. Corporate investigators. A journalist. Someone from Elise's HR department asking for a statement. I didn't pick up any of them. I just watched the sunlight crawl slowly across the countertop, wondering how much of what she'd built was already collapsing. Around noon, Eric called again. His voice was low but almost incredulous. "You won't believe this," he said. "They froze her accounts. All of them. Turns out she'd been rerouting invoices under fake vendor names for nearly 6 months. Grant's the one who signed off on them. They're both finished." Apparently, Elise had confessed partially, blaming Grant, saying he coerced her into the scheme, that she was only following his plan. But the paper trail said otherwise. My business name, my home IP, my bank information had been the shield she hid behind. She'd forged documents, falsified payment logs, and routed thousands through my name without me knowing. It was enough to ruin me if I hadn't gathered the evidence first. That realization still made my skin crawl. I didn't feel victory. Not yet. Just exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones after too many nights of holding your breath. That afternoon, her parents came by to collect her belongings. Her mother couldn't look at me. Her father did most of the talking, apologizing on her behalf, even though I never asked him to. He said Elise was out on bail, but couldn't come near the property, restraining order terms. I told him I wished her no harm, that I just wanted distance. He nodded, eyes glassy. Before leaving, he said quietly, "You deserved better than this, son." When they left, I went through what remained, drawers, shelves, closets. Every corner of the apartment still held a piece of her. Photos from trips, notes on the fridge, her favorite blanket tossed on the couch. It felt like walking through a museum of someone else's life, one I'd only pretended to be part of. The next few days unfolded like a storm spreading outward. Elise was suspended from work pending investigation, then officially terminated. Her reputation at the company disintegrated overnight. News spread that a major client had threatened legal action, which triggered full criminal charges. Grant, meanwhile, tried to disappear, but the authorities found him fast. He'd used his company laptop to store incriminating files Elise had already transferred to herself. They'd trapped each other. I didn't have to say a word. I just handed over my saved data to the investigators and stepped away from everything. Within a week, I sold the condo. I didn't even care about the price. I just wanted it gone. I packed what little I cared about into 2 suitcases and left the rest behind for the cleaning crew. The realtor told me she'd seen breakups before, but this one feels haunted. I told her she wasn't wrong. I moved into a small apartment near the edge of town. It had no memories, no photos, no ghost of anyone else's perfume. Just bare walls, a mattress, a desk, and my laptop. For the first time in years, I felt like the space actually belonged to me. Weeks passed before I heard anything directly from Elise. Then one morning, a thick envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in the same neat handwriting I used to love. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Inside was a letter, handwritten, pages long. She said she'd lost everything. She said she'd been scared, pressured, confused, all the excuses I'd expected. But one line caught me off guard. She wrote, "You were supposed to be the safe one, Damon. The one who never noticed." That sentence burned. Because it was true. She'd mistaken kindness for blindness, trust for weakness. I never wrote back. A month later, I got an email from her company's legal department confirming the case's closure. Grant had accepted a plea deal and admitted full guilt in exchange for leniency. Elise's charges were reduced, but she was still convicted of corporate fraud. 18 months in a correctional facility, plus restitution. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I just closed the laptop and sat there in silence. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding, not just financially, but mentally. I restructured my freelance business, moved clients to new accounts, set up security systems that even I barely understood. But the paranoia stayed. Every sound in the apartment made me look twice. Every notification made my pulse jump. I learned to live quietly, detached, careful. Sometimes I'd take long drives at night, letting the highway empty my thoughts. The world outside seemed bigger again, louder, alive in ways it hadn't felt in months. But every time I parked and came home, I'd still glance toward the router light. Still blinking, steady and calm. The same signal that once betrayed me now marked peace. About 4 months later, Eric invited me to a bar downtown. He said I needed to rejoin the living. I went, mostly out of politeness. He introduced me to a few people. One of them, a woman named Lillian, soft-spoken, sharp eyes, worked in IT compliance. When Eric mentioned my story in vague terms, she laughed lightly and said, "You must have had terrible Wi-Fi security." For the first time in a long time, I laughed too. We talked for hours, not about Elise, not about betrayal, but about random things. Music, old movies, the kind of conversations that didn't lead anywhere heavy. I didn't know if it would become anything, and I didn't care. It just felt good to talk without calculating what might be hidden between the lines. That night, when I came home, I stood in the middle of my small living room and looked around. The silence no longer felt threatening. It felt earned. I pulled out the small black vent camera I'd kept, the one that had seen everything. I turned it in my hands, wondering if I should throw it away. Then I placed it on the shelf above the router, plugged it in again, and watched the tiny blue light blink to life. Not as surveillance, as a reminder. Because I'd learned something important. Sometimes the truth hides in the smallest noises, a whisper behind a door, a flicker in a signal, a pause in someone's breath. You don't have to chase it. You just have to listen long enough for it to reveal itself. And when it finally does, it changes everything. So now, When I sit at my desk working, that small blue light still glows in the corner of my vision. It doesn't unsettle me anymore. It reminds me that I survived. Elise's name hasn't crossed my screen in months. Her parents sent one last message through Eric, a quiet apology, a note that she'd been moved to a minimum security facility and was reflecting. I deleted it without replying. I don't wish her pain. I just wish she'd chosen honesty over ambition before turning our home into a lie. Sometimes, I still think back to that night. I picture myself crouched beside the router, wires tangled, light blinking, and her voice whispering through the door, "He's in the kitchen. Keep quiet." And I realize now, she wasn't just warning her lover. She was confessing without knowing it. That whisper started everything. And in the end, it was the one truth she ever told.